But I was going to first ask about, Ana Kasparian. She was saying that after she got assaulted by this homeless guy, she's not only was she called racist, but she saw these other progressive channels were making things up about her and lying about her. And that was like a wake-up call. So my response was, yes, this is what we see from the larger
Tim's
left.
just jealous because he doesn't like it when a handsome man rocks a beanie.
Also, you guys have no idea where this is about to go. Wherever you think it's about to go, it's going to go in a very different direction. Get ready.
Space. An example I have from you guys, and it's not the biggest news story in the world or anything, but just one example off the top of my head, is that there were 5 different studies that came out that said conservatives are more attractive than liberals on average. And you guys did, I think, 3 different videos about me. And in it, in one with Nando Villa, who I know, and Anna, who I know, they insulted me, called me ugly, said I was wrong. Having nothing to do with news, this is what I get from progressive media when I was 100% dispassionate and correct. My point was, we had a study that came out as a story from like the Washington Post that said conservatives tend to be more attractive. And I said, this is why you'll tend to see conservatives being fiercely independent and meritocratic, because people who are more attractive go through life. It's easier. Everybody wants to give them things. And then they say,
so Tim Pool's unironic analysis here. I can't believe people actually watch this guy and take him at all seriously. But he's like, you know how Anna's been out here talking about how the left lies? Well, that kind of reminded me of when you said I was ugly. Like, totally just bastardizing whatever point Ana Kasparian was trying to make.
It's also hilarious because at the same time that he's forcing them to confront what their show was and who TYT was, it's at the same time that Cenk is acting so above it. It's like, I can't believe anybody would ever lie in the mud. I can't believe anybody would ever slander anybody else or dunk on them or destroy them. And it's like, no, dude, that's what you did forever. Or, acting like you're above a little, dunking on it because they did it to Tim Pool or to Dave Rubin or to Jimmy Dore, right? Yeah, dude, I'm sorry, but you don't get to choose if it gets done back to you. You've already slung mud. You've already become the kind of figurehead who's willing to make a video about Britney Spears' camel toe. You're already willing to make a video calling Tim Pool ugly. You know what I'm saying? And it's okay. You're allowed to do that, but you don't get to turn around and be mad at us because we had a couple of our listeners send you Silly and Billy shirts in 5XL.
I hate people that don't have the ability to engage in a bit of good old-fashioned self-deprecating humor. Like if someone roasted us and called us ugly, or I'll leave you out of it, but if they called me ugly, I wouldn't give a shit. I don't
somebody
care.
Called me a full-size Peter Dinklage the other day.
And who cares?
That was funny.
hey, I lifted myself up by my bootstraps. Why can't everybody else? Liberals, who tend to be less attractive, say it's hard to live without support groups, and they band together. That's actually what multiple studies have found. The response I got from you guys was 3 different segments where I was called ugly, stupid, gross, crooked teeth, putting up ugly pictures of me. And so my question to you is why? And like, how is that any better from the corporate press?
So there's 2 things there. So number one, look, Tim, we went through this last time I was on the show too. So, brother, I don't agree with your interpretation, and I think that it's kind of self-serving to say our side is more attractive. And I know that you think
I'm not saying my side. It's not my side. I'm not a conservative.
I know,
but I didn't make this up. This is numerous studies.
No, I got you. I look. There's
Numerous
8 different ways to frame an article. There's 8 different ways to frame a study. So you got to be careful about what the study. So look, we disagree on that.
That's actually the smartest thing Cenk said in a while.
Did we go too far in having laughs, etc., about the attractive, etc.? Yeah, we probably did. Okay. And so, but back then we were more in trench warfare, right? And so back then, and the reason why a lot of the right wing has a completely skewed version of me is because people take clips usually out of context, or you're doing a big long segment and they'll take a 5-second clip, a 30-second clip, a 15-second clip, etc. And that's all the other side ever sees. So we see all of your whatever is the right-wing points of view, right? We don't see any of the left-wing stuff. We don't see any of the independent stuff because that didn't make the news, right?
By the way, Cenk just called Sam Cedar of the Majority Report a grifter.
A low-rent grifter.
A low-rent grifter, like not even a week ago. And here he is breaking bread with Tim Pool. Again, not even a credible right-wing voice, not even a respectable conservative, a host or whatever you want to call it.
He's going to teach you how to do a kickflip, Gavin.
Yeah, this dude is literally breaking bread with one of the most well-known and obvious grifters, someone who was just implicated in the Tenet media scandal, which we're going to be talking about here in a second when Krystal Ball comes up. But I mean, can you believe the gall to call Sam Cedar a grifter and then go on Tim Pool and say, maybe I was too hard on you. I probably did go a little bit too far when I was making fun of you and calling you ugly. In fact, my audience needs to see the good side of you, Tim. Let me do that right. And let me whitewash and sanitize what you do for a living for the sake of attracting some of your viewers and potentially getting a little bit richer.
100%. And we can directly parallel it to two other individuals that left TYT. Dave Rubin did the same shit with guys like Ben Shapiro and Glenn Beck. Those guys used to be easy fodder for TYT. They would mock them. They would roast them. They would deride them. They would talk about how they were stupid and ugly and dumb, right? Okay. That was Dave Rubin. Now he works for Blaze TV. Okay. He's literally done interviews with Ben Shapiro where they're super chummy together until they bring up gayness. And then Ben's like, you're going to go to hell, but whatever. You're still being a vehicle for my propaganda. I'll do this with you. And then you have another example, which is Jimmy Dore. Right. Jimmy Dore used to love to slam Sam Cedar and talk about how he wasn't a real authentic leftist. Right. All that shit. Meanwhile, he's willing to go and get all chummy with Tucker Carlson and forget all of the horrible, nasty things that Tucker Carlson has said. Forget that he was a cheerleader for both the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Don't ever let Tucker forget that. Don't ever let Tucker forget that in the heat of the moment, he was 100% in favor of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he can be, I'm so sorry about it. He only decided to pivot because it was beneficial to him. In the same way, Jimmy decided to pivot because it's beneficial to him. And now Cenk is doing the exact same thing. He's calling out Sam Cedar, who's a real authentic leftist, who would never rename the studio Poly Market Studio, right? Who would never, go and be all. We saw how aggravated and catty and caustic Sam Cedar was to Tim Pool. And do you know why? It's because he doesn't fucking like him. It's because he thinks he's bad for society. It's because I think if I can speak for Sam for a moment, he thinks Tim Pool's ideas are poison for people who listen to them, as do I, as I thought Cenk did. But here they're going to talk about stupid bullshit, like whether or not it's, you're allowed to be mean on the microphone to conservatives. Grow up.
Yep. 100%. Let's keep going.
So for me, same thing for right-wing media. They will show you stuff that they think is outrageous, but they're not going to show you all the times that I said, it's probably from the Wuhan lab, Biden is too old, whatever, all those things, right? So that's why we started getting a crazy skewed view of all of us, of each other, right? So part of what Ana and I are doing now is we're trying to break down those walls, right? And so
you're here.
That's why I'm here. That's why I was here last time. That's why I'm going on Patrick Bet David again. That's why I'm going on Drinking Bros. And and these are all over the place. Like Lex Friedman, what's his politics? Nobody even knows. Yeah, right? And I don't really care. I just care about the conversation. I went on Chris Williamson's show. I'm not sure what his politics are, right? Yeah, and so I went on trigonometry. So what? Let's have a conversation. Because part of the reason why we were making fun of each other and insulting each other and doing all this stuff is because we were so separated. We stopped thinking of each other as fellow citizens, fellow Americans. And so for the left, I'm trying to break that down. And guys, let's hear them out. Are they actually anti-war? Before you make up your mind, are they actually anti-corruption? Blah, 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 blah. I got you, brother. But let's look, the labor secretary.
This guy wants me to take one look at Pete Hegseth from Fox News. And Gavin, we have to give him a while in office before we can really make up our mind if he's going to be anti-war. Did we really know if Matt Gaetz was going to be pro-corruption? We don't know if RFK is willing to, really go to the mats with Donald Trump over the McDonald's. Oh wait, yes, we already have answers to all of those things.
Yeah. And again, it's like Cenk's like, we used to just hide in our silo and we never talked to anyone who disagreed with us. And now we're breaking down walls. And it's like, yeah, if you just listen to that in a vacuum, it sounds good, I guess. Like, yeah, it is a good idea to not live in an echo chamber. But Cenk is lying. They never did. They did engage with right wingers. In fact, a lot more than other channels on the left. How did they engage with them? Through debate, through disagreement. They actually showed up and said, hey, let's hash out a disagreement, but I'm going to come prepared and I'm going to call you out where you need to be called out. I'm not going to freaking pander to your audience and try to whitewash and sanitize your profession for everyone, including my audience. That's BS. They used to understand that, but it's not like they ever would hide from these idiots. Cenk used to savor the opportunity to debate anyone on the right, and pretty viciously, oftentimes pretty effectively, I think. So, it's just ridiculous to, again, pretend like what you're doing is somehow this like pursuit of wisdom and communication and healing the nation, when in reality, even the people in Tim Pool's comment section quickly point out that, yeah, he's doing a branding pivot. That's what happened. That's what's happening. He wants a slice of Tim Pool's pie.
100%. That's why he'll go on Patrick Bet David, an obvious fucking fraud, charlatan, scam artist. Okay, but he won't debate Sam Cedar, somebody he calls a low rent grifter.
There's no reason not to like the labor secretary. The Teamsters helped to pick the labor secretary. So take the goddamn win. Take the win, right?
Everybody
so if
did.
they really want to cut the Pentagon, great. Are you kidding me? We've been dying to cut the Pentagon. Are you now going to say that you don't want to cut the Pentagon to spite Trump? That's crazy, right?
That's crazy. And by the way, real quickly, I want to quickly jump over here and contrast this coverage with Kyle Kulinski, because I think that his tone is so much more appropriate given the moment that we're in right now. And I just think that, you know, it's refreshing to hear someone who hasn't abandoned his principles when talking about something similar and keeping it real.
A way to work with them on certain things to get something done, right? Whether, he's cap credit card interest rates at 10%. I'm going to work with you on that. Or, cut the Pentagon. I'm going to work with you on that. They are not going to cap credit card interest rates at 10%, and they are not going to cut the Pentagon. I would bet my left nut those things aren't going to happen. It's not going to happen. So instead of like maybe we can hold hands and sing Kumbaya in certain areas, it's better to be like, you're fucking frauds. You're not going to do it. Right? And so it's crazy because in my mind, I'm feeling like take the resistance dial and crank it up triple. And others are feeling like, let's roll back on that resistance dial a little bit for multiple reasons. Because he's scared, and I think a lot of these people are scared of genuine retribution from Trump, and because he's bored, right? It's almost like, hey, I tried my best to take you down, and I failed. Therefore, I kind of give up, right? You can see how, like, this is how political eras sort of function. At some point, Democrats just gave up when it came to Ronald Reagan. And they were just like, okay, yeah, I guess the era of big government is over. I guess the worst words in the English language are I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Okay, we agree. I mean, that's what Bill Clinton was, right? Bill Clinton was a Democrat winning, but having the general model of Reagan. That was the political era, the neoliberal.
Boom. And that's exactly the sort of Democrat that someone like Cenk Uygur will constantly rail against. The corporate Democrat, the neoliberal Democrat, the third way, Bill Clinton Democrat. But how did the Democratic Party get there? Well, I think Kyle beautifully articulated. It was out of a similar moment of desperation and just basically a desire to give up in a very cowardly way, in a very identical way that we see right now under MAGA, not just from people like Cenk Uygur, obviously commentators, but also politicians and those who are actually in power, who have the ability to try to resist, but seemingly have no interest in actually doing so.
100%. And just to double down on that, that's a drum we've been banging over here for a while, you guys. Dave Weigel, he was, tweeting out an explanation like a lot of people were for Bernie Sanders. Like, oh, well, what he's trying to do is a gotcha on Elon Musk and MAGA. And my point was that doesn't work. You cannot do a gotcha on MAGA. Donald Trump will go out and talk about how we need to protect our women the day after the Access Hollywood video drops, where he says, I'm going to drag them by the pussy. The day after E. Jean Carroll lawsuit, doesn't matter. He's going to talk about how some scary black guy's the enemy of the people, and his base is going to go rah, rah, rah. Doesn't matter. You can't hypocrisy burn him. It doesn't matter what he does. We have to understand that what they do in reality is they launder their reputation. Okay, that all these guys are liars and frauds. You're not the richest man in the world who gets a fuckload of money, who would not be the richest man in the world. That's the only thing he cares about in life, because that's the only thing that makes him special. As soon as he's the second richest man in the world, he'll fall apart. Okay, and he only gets that title because he gets a fuckload of government contracts. He's a massive military contractor. Go ahead and look at what SpaceX does that's actually profitable. Okay, it's building missiles and drones and stupid shit like that. It ain't exploring Mars. Okay, what he does is he lies to the public, and in 2008 says we're going to be on Mars in 10 years. And now all that time you guys think he's working on shit to go to Mars. What he's really doing is he's killing people in Syria. Okay, he's making sure people in Somalia never wake up tomorrow. All right, that's what he was doing. That's what his money was going to, and that's why the United States government paid him. And that's why he's fucking, like a flies on shit to Donald Trump.
And by the way, a lot of those government contracts with Starlink and SpaceX and all these defense contractor things, they're going to Ukraine, which all these right wingers claim to be against the funding of this conflict. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the defense contracts that Elon Musk enjoys are specifically related to that never-ending war. So yeah, there's so much to be said there. But Zach, do you want to go back to this Cenk Uygur?
We're trying to
clip on
break down the
Tim Pool?
walls and have these conversations.
To that point, that's something that we actually have, or at least I have, and I've heard Tim mention as well, that
He's one
we
of the guys that
try
didn't
to
get
do
fired.
or want to see happen, because I believe that the craziness that has come from the left is from the extreme left and not from the normal kind of moderate left. And there was a time in the United States where people on the
Never
left,
heard
or people
this
that were
before,
left leaning and
guys.
people that were right leaning,
Listen up.
could go to barbecues together and hang out together and do normal things that weren't political without trying to kill each other or without actually hating each other. And I think that that kind of stuff starts by coming back to the fact that we're all Americans. We all want what's best for the country, or at least that's the common ground we should be able to find. And if you can talk to people that actually do want what's best for the country, best for the people of America, then you can actually start to have a more civil political discourse in the country. And it's something, again, I've talked about this a bunch of times, and it's something that's in my opinion necessary, because as much as everyone talks about the meme of civil war, I've talked about we need an off-ramp, and the off-ramp is being able to talk to people without getting at other people's throats. And that's something that me and Tim have talked about.
I think you being here, it's a major win.
Absolutely.
I respect and appreciate your response on things. I'm sure I've got videos as well. Everybody does. I don't think I'm a saint, but when we can have these conversations, we can pull up stories, we can discuss them, we can disagree on what they mean, like the Trump Constitution thing. You say, "Oh, you're crazy, you're wrong," but we're here, and that's
right.
that's math.
This is like the ultimate stroke off for like Gen X enlightened centrism, right? I'm just above the fray, bro. I just think, couldn't we all just kumbaya at the barbecue? Couldn't we all just hit the drum circle and bleezy it out? What if we all just took some mushrooms together, man, and vibed? You know what I mean? Then we would let love win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's like appropriating like dumb hippie culture and making it conservative in a way that drives me fucking nuts.
Oh yeah, it's the same kind of cancer that's infected so much of these like faux independent anti-establishment media spaces. They pretend to be hip and edgy and anti-establishment, but then what's their conclusion? I think the Democrats, they need to listen less to the far left and run to the right and sound more like Republicans and be more corporate and be more tough on crime and more pro police. That's the message of the show. Like, it's basically just cable news packaged in a hip independent media, wrapping paper. Less and less so. I mean, Tim Pool, I don't know who would describe him as hip or cool or young these days.
Irrelevant.
He
It's
looks
the only
like-
word that comes to mind.
Yeah, irrelevant. He looks like a 40-year-old man cosplaying as a teenager. Like, come on, dude, drop the shtick with the I'm a skater with a beanie. Like, dude, you're a grown-ass man that basically just regurgitates right-wing propaganda all day. There's nothing cool or hip or edgy or counterculture about it. It's boring. If it's just completely boring. That's my biggest problem with this direction that Cenk and Ana is going in as well. I think we really saw it on display in Ana Kasparian's Piers Morgan interview. Her debate, it wasn't even a debate.
It wasn't a debate.
Piers Morgan agreed with her at every single turn. And her analysis was basically no different than, again, what you're going to hear on cable news. The Democrats listen too much to the activist left. They're just servants to the activist base. What they need to do is spit more in the face of the activist left and cater more to suburban, rich, white ladies like me. That's basically what you're getting.
Imagine if your takeaway is that, we need less activism on the left. That was her takeaway as the host of a progressive news network, an executive producer, no less.
Massive. And I think that's going to. I'm really optimistic moving forward. I'm glad
Yeah.
you are too.
So let me say a couple of things about it. First, I was guilty of it, no question. I remember writing after 2020. I'm like, I don't want to know any Trump voters. I don't want to associate with Trump voters. I got no interest in it. Okay, and so. But what I've seen is that, first of all, the Trump base changed. I'm the only one on the left saying that. and I'm so curious to see if I'm right or wrong, because your only time is going to tell.
Wrong.
You know, when Trump does something the base doesn't like, is he tested, et cetera, right? But more importantly, when I started seeing exactly to your point about the Civil War, I not only did a big percentage of the right wing want to separate, like Marjorie Taylor Greene was saying, but then in the polls I started seeing, wait a minute, a huge percentage of Democrats want to separate.
Yeah.
Like, and so not as much as Republicans at that time. Republicans had lost, right, in 2020. So of course they wanted it more, but it was a big number for the Democrats. Oh, maybe we separate out the coast, and oh yeah, and we'll leave the rest of them to die or whatever, right? Or live in squalor, all this stuff. I'm like, what do you? Wait. No. I hate this, because we're supposed to be America. It's United States of America, right? And so with that division was good. Now it's gotten to like a cancerous state where Joy Reid is saying, don't talk to family at Thanksgiving, right?
That's crazy.
And that's crazy. So some of my family members, some of my best friends are right wing, right? And
Bro, Donald Trump, like a week before getting elected, referred to the opposition, the left, as the enemy from within. And that's not even to bring up his Nazi-like rhetoric when it comes to immigrants, saying that they're poisoning the blood of the country, yada, yada, yada. But, let's not even talk about immigrants. Let's just talk about Americans, because that's what they're discussing. This whole concept of civil war or whatever. Again, a week before the election, Donald Trump called us the enemy within. And then they want to pearl clutch about Joe Biden making a joke about how Trump supporters are garbage or whatever. Meanwhile, completely ignoring the many provocations and the many calls to division that Donald Trump has basically based his entire ideology and his entire political platform on. And again, not even among immigrants, but straight up within American citizens. It's crazy, this gaslighting. And Cenk's not even going to call that out. He's just going to go along with it and keep blaming the left and acting like people that wanted to resist Donald Trump were the problem. And that people wanted to live in a non-fascist country, actually we're the problem because we dared to resist and call out fascism and the boot soldiers of it. Crazy.
we do what we kind of are doing on this show. I go, you're crazy. He goes, you're crazy. And then we go have a beer, right?
That's really good that you can do that. I mean, it was like a few days after the election before my
This is a literal parody.
mom would return my text.
Yeah. No,
I'm sorry
we
to hear
can't.
that.
I know.
Yeah, we can't do that, man. We've got to talk to each other. Otherwise, we might not know when we agree.
Well, maybe you can reach out to Krystal Ball and ask her to apologize, because I saw that clip from earlier where she lied about me, or maybe she was just wrong and she didn't fact check what she was saying. But I get sent this clip where you were on her show and she said I was told to push Russian propaganda or some other nonsense like that, which is a complete fabrication, not true. You were even on that show, which is totally independent. No one told us to host you on the Culture War podcast. It was a show that got licensed out. And then I think this is another, so we have the clip here. I mean, it's just Krystal Ball saying,
it's just him airing his own personal grievances to Cenk Uygur and Cenk hearing him out for, if you're wondering if that's what this is, it's what this is.
I'm blackpilled because, Tim Pool took shady money and was told to push propaganda or whatever, which is completely fake, just not real. And so maybe there's an opportunity for, I asked her for a retraction and apology. I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. It's not true. And maybe there's, you can reach out to her and tell her, you're not going to say, hey, Tim Pool hit you up?
No. Tim, I mean, look.
So how do we fix problems like this?
Okay, but Tim, you're going to make me ask you a question. Okay, but if that's not what happened, what happened?
You were on that show, The Culture War, right? It
was on one episode.
You're on one episode, sure. We produced it in-house. You came to our studio. Mm-hmm. We reached out to you, asked you to come on the show. Nobody told us to do that. We produce everything.
And also, I'll remind everyone, when it comes to the tenant media thing, the worst case scenario, the most criminal scenario for Tim Pool and the other people that were implicated is that they did know what was happening and that they knowingly took that money, essentially knowing where it was coming from. And then they, changed their coverage to fit who the money was coming from. You can find a bunch of clips of Tim Pool spreading straight up Russian propaganda on his show that a lot of people directly linked to that funding. But even if you don't want to believe that, there's technically no evidence that Tim Pool knew anything. So the other explanation is that he's the world's dumbest person alive. That he's literally the stupidest, least thorough person / businessman on the planet. Because, if you're running a so-called independent media operation where you're supposed to be objective about the news, don't you think it's kind of important to look into who is offering you massive sums of money and why? I mean, if you don't think it's important, then just get a job on cable news. Like, isn't a big part of the critique of independent media the fact that, oh, we're not corrupted? Mainstream media is corrupted, specifically by advertisers and other corporate influences. We aren't. Isn't that the point?
Yeah.
So if you're just going to admit that, yeah, we don't care where the money comes from, we don't care who's paying us and why, then okay, you're right. But don't call yourself an objective independent show.
This is a major network with, dozens of employees at one point, right? And this is what came out September the 5th of 2024. They have millions of followers online. They have been major players in right-wing political discourse since Donald Trump was president, and they worked unknowingly for a company that was a front for Russian influence operation, U.S. prosecutors say. Now, I will go ahead and say to everybody, they probably found this as a result of all their Russiagate hysteria. But you know what? When the government turns up your crimes, the government turns up your crimes, right? An indictment filed on Wednesday alleges a media company linked to 6 conservative influencers. And I think it's important that we remind everybody it's not just Tim Pool, but also Dave Rubin, who got his start from Cenk, right? You would think he would at least have documented this a little more thoroughly. You'd think we would have seen a little more outrage from him specifically targeted at Dave. You'd think he would have maybe decided to take the gloves off and air out the dirty laundry and really expose that this guy's just a money-grubbing whore, okay? Right? You'd think that maybe he would do that. You'd think that maybe he would have a little bit of his own understanding of what happened between Tenet Media and Tim Pool and Rave Dubin, but he still has no clue how to adequately press the case.
100%. And again, like, just ask yourself, guys, if you really want to believe this bullshit from Tim Pool. Oh, we're victims. Say like Mehdi Hassan's media company, Zateo, say that it was uncovered that he was quote unquote unknowingly taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from like the government of Pakistan or like Qatar or some shit like that. Do you really think these people would give the same benefit of the doubt to someone like Mehdi Hassan, who again recently founded his own media company, which is actually, from what I can tell, independent,
Really based too.
great company? As Zateo is awesome, highly recommend it. But could you imagine the shit show on the right if it came out that, or China, oops, sorry, I was accidentally accepting $100,000 per video from China, from the Communist Party of China. Oops, I had no idea. I'm actually the victim, though. Trust me, I did nothing wrong, and in no way did it influence my coverage.
By circumstance, I parroted the direct party line, but only because I sincerely believe in the vision, the utopia of the, Chinese Communist Party. And one day I do believe that we will restore one Korea. If you're saying crazy shit like that, I don't trust you. It's like you're at that point, you're just like a Danny Haifong kind of a guy where all you do is push propaganda for China, or you're like a Jackson Hinkle where you're pushing propaganda for Russia, even more directly and brazenly than these guys that we mentioned earlier.
Yep. And also, like, how are you going to deny that there's an issue with this in right-wing media? I mean, Tucker Carlson is back in Moscow doing more obvious propaganda.
Wait, he went back?
Yeah, this is from like a day ago.
Did they go back to the grocery store?
I don't know. I haven't watched the full episode.
Man, in America, they can't afford their bacon.
If you ever see one of these motherfuckers in a grocery store bragging about the low prices and how clean it is, then it's paid for propaganda. And again, like, Zach and I are not one of these like hysterical channels that freaks out about Russian influence every day. It's definitely no worse than the Israeli influence on our politics. That's for sure. Way worse. Yeah, but we call that out, and we're also going to call this out. And yeah, it's very obvious what's going on. And even if you want to say that, oh no, Tim Pool was a total victim, he was just a complete dumbass that did no due diligence and none of his homework. Okay, well, there's still clearly a problem with this in right-wing media. And that's what Krystal was referencing when she's talking about how black-pilled she was as it relates to the independent media space.
100%. And if you guys look at that damn grocery store that Tucker was going around complimenting, it looks like one of the run-down backwater grocery stores. Oh, this is not a Whole Foods. This is not, a Wegmans. This is not a Winn-Dixie. I'm trying to think of big chains, right?
Like Piggly Wiggly or
something?
something?
It ain't like that shit. You go into that, it looked sterile. It looked cold. Honestly, it looked like it was Russian grocery store. Everything that they fear-mongered about if you were born in like 1950, that was embodied by, and he's looking around, he's like, very clean, very white in here. All of the packaging, it looks very similar. Easy to decide what product to buy. Wow. And it's only, 40 rubles, which in America, that would be very cheap. And then he does not examine at all the average income of a Russian individual, a Russian working class person at all. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's like actually, and that's how much an average Russian person makes in a year.
Right.
That's how much it costs to get groceries.
If you were buying your bacon at Russian prices, you could have 2 pieces instead of 1.
Yeah.
Own the company 100%, and we licensed distribution non-exclusively to one company that was run out of Tennessee by a prominent conservative podcaster who worked for the Blaze. That's what happened.
Dave Rubin.
After the fact, if she got money from anywhere else, I have nothing to do with that.
Right.
Oh,
So
Lauren
I
Chen.
also-
It did come
The
from the
Blaze
Russians
is where Dave Rubin works,
at
my
some
bad.
point.
Allegedly, right now.
You acknowledge that.
So
No?
there's a DOJ indictment alleging that RT employees had funneled money through shell companies to Lauren Chen, which she then used to pay out multiple personalities that she had signed agreements with. I don't know about the agreements of any other people, but the question I asked of Sam Cedar and I ask of you, you have sponsors on the Young Turks?
Yeah.
Do you ask them where they get their funding from? When a company comes to you and says,
This is
hey, we want to
damning
license
as
a segment
fuck.
from your show.
This is damning as fuck, guys, because they're a progressive news network. They're an independent news network, right? What he is about to relay to you is that Cenk is going to kind of quietly reveal, like, no, we don't care where Polymarket gets its money. We don't care where Polymarket gets his money. We didn't care where Jeffrey Katzenberg got his money, right? He renamed the Young Turks studio the Polymarket studio, guys. Think about how down bad you have to be to do that as a progressive news host. How humiliating that must be for you to run around like you're the antithesis to MSNBC. Why? Because you run a smaller, shittier network that's also really not entertaining?
Do you say, hold on, I got to figure out what company is providing the funding, what's your revenue sources?
Tim, I would say it depends. If you're a normal sponsor and you had a normal negotiation about CPMs, etc., there's no reason to suspect. But
What the fuck are you talking about? You don't make sure that your advertisers reflect your values at all? Guys, we've talked about this a lot because I do think it's really imperative that the left starts to grow our media space. I think that's undeniable. I think that's a big reason of why we got our ass kicked, and it's why, the Democratic Party doesn't take us as seriously as they need to. We really need to start rebuilding on that front. So I understand that if you're going to be a large network with 75 some odd employees like the Young Turks, and I would say live by your progressive values and be able to compensate everyone fairly, right? If that was what was going on behind the scenes at the Young Turks, of course we want you guys to unionize and collectively negotiate. Let's look at our books and see how much we can really afford to pay our employees, because that's what unions do. They don't want the company to go out of business. They want to look at the real numbers and see how much can you afford to pay people. Great. Let's make sure we're getting our employees as much as the company can sustain while still factoring in growth. I talk to union guys all the time. They negotiate for a living. They are fucking businessmen. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Cenk is telling you right now that in addition to not doing all of that shit, in addition to paying his employees like crap, in addition to undermining their efforts to unionize, he's also saying, yeah, well, if it's a new, looking fresh company, we don't do any investigation into where they get their money. We just ask what the CPM is. We just, where are we going to, just when's the check going to clear? I got things to take care of this weekend. It's absolutely baffling to know that they do zero scrutiny. Like if they were kind of a la the Majority Report, only really doing, sponsorships from companies that reflect their value. We talked about how Majority Report immediately canceled Brooklyn and sponsorship after finding out that they were going to start manufacturing in Israel. Things like that, right? Putting your money where your mouth is and taking the L when you have to. That's respectable and commendable. It's not something Gavin and I have ever chosen to do because we're two guys and we've been able to sustain our show with merchandise. Check that out. And also our Patreon. But if we ever do grow, it's not something that's out of the question. What we would never, ever, 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 ever fucking do is this stupid shit like this, right? Like if Gavin and I had to pay 100 employees, like probably we wouldn't ask for our audience to float that entire bill. I understand it's a different set of circumstances for a show like Cenk, but there is no way to ethically distinguish yourself from MSNBC, from CNN, from the New York Times if you're going to just take whatever advertisers try and, offer you money. It's crazy and it's whorish.
Yep, 100%.
we do check a little bit more diligently, but at the same time, we're not like doctrinarian about, like, for example, Polymarket is one of our sponsors. God bless. So some people say, oh, you should, I don't like them. Well, okay,
They're getting
you don't like 'em.
investigated or something's going on.
But we don't take money from oil companies. We don't take money from defense contractors. So there's a whole list of
Oh, you saint.
people we don't
I will take money from scammers like Polymarket where you can't legally gamble on the site in fucking America.
take money from. Yeah, so we do some due diligence,
Yeah.
right? So, and in that case, and I criticize you for this, Tim. Look, that's a monster number.
No, it isn't.
Okay, really?
How much money do you make per month?
So I'm not going to get into how much money we make per month.
Nah, you
That's
can't do
because
that. You
it's
can't-
humiliating. That's because it's humiliating numbers for him. And even Tim Pool would be astonished. Okay. He would be astonished at how bad and how dire the straits are at Young Turks. Guys, I cannot express to you. I don't talk about it a lot. Gavin, he'll vouch for me. I got really into business school for a while. Okay. When I was out on my ass, I went to business school and I put 2.5 hard years into the venture capital world, into the startup world. I lived and breathed it. I know how business bros think. I had to work for a deranged CEO when they talk about founders. I know what that shit is like. These guys, it's so competitive within them. Cenk sees a guy like Tim Pool as his equal because he only respects people who have media companies behind them, right? And he respects right-wingers and men more than he does somebody like Krystal Ball. He clearly did not see Krystal Ball as a contemporary. He wanted to talk down to her and lecture her. He's not even doing that to Tim Pool, a right-wing Republican here, but he will never reveal how much money the Young Turks makes because he would lie. He would overestimate by about 30%. I can guarantee you that's pretty standard when you're talking about business. Okay, you're going to overinflate your numbers by about 30. Okay, you think you can get away with it, but he won't even dare to do that because anywhere that would be even remotely close to true, that wouldn't get him in trouble with lying to shareholders by saying that they generate more money. Because that's also something he can't do. He's the CEO. He's the primary shareholder, guys. He can't go on Tim Pool's show and lie about how much money the Young Turks making, right? So I don't even know if he could up 30% and get away with it. It would be manipulating stock value. It would be lying about how much his company's worth, which is a crime.
But per
do
video,
that.
to getting $100,000 per video is a monster number.
No, it
an
isn't.
outrageously high number.
It's absolutely not correct.
You make $100,000 regularly per video?
So that we do 8 figures on Timcast. A Timcast IRL is an 8-figure per year company. So when we get approached by, I'm trying to be careful because we're currently doing contract negotiations with a bunch of different companies and we have sponsors. We have one sponsor that pays us.
And by the way, it's like you're literally just proving Krystal's point. The clip you're so triggered about, all that Krystal said was that she's black-pilled and depressed about the state of so-called independent media because of how corrupt they've become. Because of the fact that as far as sponsorships go, it's basically the new cable news. That's where a lot of the money is at. And whereas independent media was originally looked at and promoted as an alternative to mainstream cable corporate news, it is now just becoming the new mainstream corporate cable news. And Tim Pool admitting here that, yeah, we'll take money from anyone and everyone, whoever the highest bidder is. Yeah, that's basically all that Krystal was saying. That's basically what her point is that, yeah, all these fools like Tim Pool and Joe Rogan that idiots out in the wild think of as independent and think of as truth tellers. No, they're on the payroll. They're getting paid off and they're in bed with corporate America to the same extent as a lot of the people on cable news who they constantly criticize are. And actually, Krystal makes a great point too, that in some cases it's worse because these sponsors have a direct relationship with the hosts. Back in the cable days, whoever the given host was isn't necessarily directly communicating or talking with the sponsors, whoever the advertisers on that network is. But in this case, it absolutely is. Tim Pool himself is engaged in these contract negotiations. And as he's admitting, he's basically just sucking up to the highest bidder, any and every corporation, no matter how bad it is.
Yeah, great point by Krystal and Gav.
$100,000. We get, in one instance, we got $50,000 for one ad read. So when we go to contract negotiations and we say, hey, guess what? Timcast IRL is the biggest live show on YouTube primetime. That costs a lot of money. So if you come to Tim Pool and you say, we want to license a show for you, you may say, why would I do it? So this is important. And we're rehashing something that most of my audience already knows. I was negotiating with 3 different companies. We are
I told you this was going to immediately turn into a dick slinging contest. That's how these business bros operate.
fielding multiple offers. One of those offers was $30 million. I took a lesser offer with lesser responsibilities.
Yeah, because it was probably some shithole fraudulent company that you couldn't even push on your lazy ass fucking subscribers. You would probably have to push some like dick pills that would make hair grow out of your palms and you shit blood for a week. Okay, that's the kind of stuff. He's like, I got offered $30 million. It's because nobody in their right mind would try and sell that shit to your audience. That's because you're participating in a pyramid scheme or fraud or something deranged, and you are so ego-driven and narcissistic, and you don't give a fuck about your audience. You're willing to try and hawk 90% of that shit. But even you, guy who would peddle Russian propaganda for quick cash, guy who would sell out anybody for $1, bridge too far, because that might actually, cost me more juice than I was able to squeeze.
Yep. And also, guys, what have I been telling you about why Cenk is doing what Cenk is doing? Well, Tim Pool just made it pretty clear to everyone. Did you all hear that? Did you all hear about the massive, unholy sums of money that he's being offered to do a simple ad read? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is why Cenk is doing what he's doing. And Tim even goes on later in this interview to say, and you know what, Cenk, now that we're in this new era of independent media, I think TYT is going to get a big boost soon too. I think, you're going to get some of this success coming your way too. Obviously, because he knows what Cenk's doing. Tim Pool's not an idiot. He sees that Cenk is encroaching on his turf and that he's coming for that same money. Cenk wants the money. And so does Ana. That's what this is about, guys. It's not about breaking bread and breaking down barriers and, healing this country. No, it's about getting phenomenally wealthy and getting in bed with anyone and everyone of the corporate variety who will line their coffers to unholy extents. Like I said,